Every day we are introduced to thousands of images. Some make us laugh, some pass us by, while others catch our attention and make us think about the world around us. These photographs, the ones that depict poverty, injustice, violence, and other social issues, are meant to awaken us and prompt change and awareness. These photos have a mission, and it is to provoke social activism. However, many critics have declared this type of photography dead. With the introduction of other multimedia options, the decline of the printed paper, and the progress of technology so that everyone can be a photojournalist, there's a very pessimistic view on social documentary photography. Through this presentation, I will investigate if social documentary photography is still alive today. Does it have a future, and if so, what does it consist of? First, I will examine the history of social documentary photography and how it has transformed. Then, I will highlight a couple of case studies of modern photographers who shed light onto its present state. Finally, I will end with an outlook on where this photography is heading. Social documentary photography dates all the way back to the mid-1800s. In 1851, the French Commission de Monuments Historiques hired photographers to photograph dilapidated and decaying buildings in order to raise money for the restoration. During the same time period, Hill and Adamson took photos of a very poor fishing village in Scotland. Through selling these prints, they hoped to raise money for these fishermen. As the years passed on, many other photographers documented issues ranging from the fetid living conditions in slums, famines, and wars. All these photos raised awareness and some money for charity, but none of them had provoked lawful change until Jacob Riis. Riis was a police reporter for the New York Herald, but he later quit his job and became a photographer, for he realized the power of the photograph. Riis's photographic project, How the Other Half Lives, looked into the appalling slum living conditions. And through these photographs, Riis was able to motivate President Theodore Roosevelt to pass the Tenement House Act of 1901, which created housing reform for the tenements. This was the first major victory for social documentary photography. Shortly after Riis, Lewis Hines started to photograph children working in mines, mills, and fields, because he believed and people saw the horrible conditions that children were working in, that there would be a movement for change. In the end, he was right, since Congress shortly after passed the Keating-Owens Act of 1916, which established child labor laws. This mentality that if photographers create awareness of the issues of their time, the middle class would provoke change and reform continued through the 1930s and 1940s, as epitomized by the FSA or Farm Security Administration. This administration hired photographers, such as Dorothy Lange and Gordon Parks, to document the lives of poor rural Americans to gather support for Roosevelt's reform programs. The FSA forever changed the notion of what documentary work can or should be. However, in the 1950s and 60s, social documentary photography declined due to the introduction of the television. Photography lost its appeal, and during Reagan's era, Americans did not want to be reminded of the inequities of the world. This decline continued until the internet opened up a world of new opportunities for social activism photography. Yet there are still questions regarding its vitality and effectiveness today. Riis and Hines were very successful in using their photos to create change, but has there been a modern equivalent of Riis? An important part to discovering if social activism photography is still active today is to examine a few of today's prominent social documentary photographers and what impacts, if any, they have had. First, I will start with Donna Ferrato, who focuses on a very serious topic, domestic abuse. Her life and photography forever changed when she witnessed a man hitting his wife right before her eyes. To fully understand domestic abuse, Ferrato stayed with the victims and their abusers. She stayed in women's shelters, and she accompanied police officers rushing to domestic abuse conflicts. Through all these experiences, she took photos and used them to create Living with the Enemy, a book that significantly affected the problem it documents, helping to change laws and establish and finance domestic violence centers throughout the country. Ferrato has not only exposed the world of domestic violence, but she has also started her own non-profit organization, Domestic Abuse Awareness, to raise money for women's shelters through her photography.
And my pictures have helped change laws to protect women from domestic violence. They were shown to governors and to judges and to legislators and to activists. My photographs have really helped to open people's eyes. And although my photographs didn't eliminate domestic violence, they did bring the epidemic to public consciousness.
Continuing further, Ed Cashy is a photojournalist whose photography has also raised money for specific causes. His work ranges from socio-political issues in Ireland to Iraq, but I'm going to focus on his photographs in the Niger Delta and a photo he took of a woman with breast cancer. Cashy worked with National Geographic in 2007 to publish a story and photos of the impact of oil in the poor Niger Delta. After it was issued, Cashy received a phone call from an anonymous woman who wanted a print of this photo. a boy carrying a freshly killed goat. Unaware of her intentions, Kashi sent her a copy. And what this woman ended up doing is searching for the boy and is now paying for his education. It took one photo and a concerned member of our society to forever change this boy's life. Furthermore, when New York Times published Kashi's photos of a woman with breast cancer who had no health insurance in Dallas, $50,000 came pouring in as donations soon after it was published. Finally, there is Jonathan Tognovic, founder of Foundation Rwanda. In the Rwanda genocide, rape was used as a weapon of war against a Tutsi woman, and even though the genocide is long gone, the women are still haunted from the past. To show the world what these women are still going through, Tognovic photographed these women and their children born of rape. In simply publishing these photos in Stern magazine in Germany and Telegraphy in London, he received over $250,000 in donations. To this day, his Foundation Rwanda, which raises money for the education of these children born of rape, has raised more than $1 million, and his photography and photojournalism are the backbone to this movement. Also, Tognovic has been nominated for an Emmy for his short film Intended Consequences, which is based on his work in Rwanda. Now, if you notice, all these photographers I've just mentioned do not solely take the photos and expect the public to create change, as in the 1900s. Just going out there and getting the story isn't enough anymore, Tognovic says. They are all involved in starting organizations, foundations, multimedia films, presenting speeches and presentations, and much more. Ed Kashi says, after my Aging in American project came out, I had been invited to speak about these issues to forums that aren't photographic. It's the nature of documentary photography work to see things with our own eyes, to acquire this valuable wealth of knowledge, and what kills me about my own profession is we don't seem to value that. It's just all about the picture. Nevertheless, there are limitations to social documentary photography, especially since many of the photographs are commissioned on these projects. They must abide by the rules and standards of their commissioners, and for example, O'Reilly was not allowed to publish his photos of soldiers in Afghanistan putting on clean, white, non-military issued socks, since the military unit he was did not approve of it. Also, Jonathan Tognovic published his photos in Germany and London, since he could not in the United States. However, even though there are some rules, regulations, and limits to these photographs, the truth will always find its way. If not in the United States, then in Germany, and if not through commissions, then through self-financed projects and organizations. When critics say that photography is not the only method of multimedia anymore, that anyone can be photojournalists, and that traditional print is declining, their criticisms have validity. Videos and other forms of multimedia are becoming more prominent, cameras are not as exclusive anymore, anyone can document with a simple cell phone, and newspaper sales have been decreasing with the introduction of online news. However, this doesn't necessarily mean that social documentary photography is dying. As seen in case studies, photographers are thinking of innovative ways to introduce the public to these social issues. Activism goes beyond the photographs, Dunfrado says. When thinking of photography as social activism with a traditional mindset, yes, it does not have a future, because the times are changing, but we must realize that if we are interested in affecting change, we need to think of our photos as a starting point, not a final destination. Stephen DuPont offers a similar perspective, and the future of magazines and newspapers photography is pretty dire, so I'm looking well beyond that to collections, universities, education outlets, and fellowships so that work can be seen by another kind of audience. Some of these photographs have immediate effects, while others will take years for them to have a profound impact. Whichever the case, photographs do have the power to awaken change, inspire others to take part in a movement, and provoke social activism. Nonetheless, we must remember that the photograph is only the beginning.